Hey there, welcome to episode 146 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at 3:49 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here in the greater Vegas area on Friday, December 12, 2025. We do publish on Fridays, so kind of close at the end of this week. Weird weather, if I may say. And it's weird everywhere in the world, so stop complaining. The title and topic of today's episode, what are Vegas KPIs and OKRs? And if you don't know what those are, hang on, we'll get there. If this is your first time listening to the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, you may or may not know what Cafe Genius is. Let's change that. Cafe with two F's, an homage to the Cafe Centro coffee shop, formerly located in San Francisco, in the South Park, quite literally a park, grass, trees, park benches. I've been there several times. It was quite nice. South Park is located very near the Oracle ballpark in San Francisco. Used to be the Pac-Bell ballpark, I think. And was it ever the singular ballpark? I don't know. Unfortunately, Cafe Centro did not survive very long after the pandemic. It was where startups start. It is infamously where Jack Dorsey was working on Twitter on his laptop. Was he the originator of that code? Depends on who you ask. But he was there. Cafe Centro's celebrity moment, perhaps. And then Genius as in the Genius lunches we used to have back in the Downtown Project days. I was only a spectator. I was traveling around the world for Intel Corporation. But when I was in town, I would sometimes get invited to come along. They were just ad hoc, just whenever people would catch up. It seems that people working on their startup ideas, their entrepreneurial endeavors, don't have time to spend all day hanging out, conducting transactional conversations. But a quick lunch, a quick rundown, catch up, some gossip, who's working on what, what's up, what's down, all that. So when I was doing some conversations about getting the pitch workout room started in January of 2022, the question was, what are we going to call this? And I was like, Cafe Genius, pitch workout room, pitch mingle, etc. So that's the origin story. And then impresarios with two S's. Impresarios are people doing cool stuff. And if you're not a guest on this program, hopefully we are talking about things that relate to you. And maybe over time, if we talk about them enough, they will improve and benefit you. So Cafe Genius Impresario is a show about our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem and the people making it go, mostly in Greater Vegas, but it could be anywhere. So this may be useful to you wherever you are. 146 episodes already. Crazy times. What are Vegas KPIs and OKRs? Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes. The show notes contain a brief summary, 2 sentences, which I'll read. They're not that long, don't worry. And then the links for today's episode, there are 2 shameless self-promotion links and 3 episode links. So let's get started so we can get finished. Hopefully my voice will stand up to this. The weather has had some impact on my ability to speak clearly. We'll make it work. So the summary of today's episode is thus: there has been a lot made of the soft summer and the general slowing of tourism and all that entails for Vegas, to the point where people are a little bit worried about the economy in general. What about we entrepreneurial innovators? How are we doing and how are we coming along? It's said that the Vegas economy is a harbinger of the global economy. We'll see. The links for today's episode include the Cafe Genius homepage link, Cafe, C-A-F-F-E, Genius, G-E-N-I-U-S, Cafe Genius, no space, .org. There are some things from the old website regarding pitch workout room, pitch mingle, etc. I need to add those on there, and then we'll start adding some Genius Roundtable information. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. And of course, you can find links to this audio program on the homepage or somewhere on the website. Right now it's on the homepage. Yeah, if you look at the website today, it's ugly. I've really just not gotten back to doing the design part, but we'll get there. How do I make money doing all this stuff? The answer is simple: volume. And the host profile page, if there were a guest, there could be a guest profile page. So for me, as your host, the profile page linking everything is at, and it still is at buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. It's my freeform profile page. It's been there for probably 5 years. I keep saying 5 years, and I really should check, but something like 5 years. Sometime in the pandemic timeframe got started. So the buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile page has links to all the audio programs, whether the YouTube links or the Spotify for Creators links or the home pages. I could put more links as well, but that's a good start. The Spotify for Creators profile page has links for each audio program, for Apple Podcast, Amazon Podcast, Spotify, RSS feeds. It should always be easy to get podcasts. So the homepage and the profile page linking everything, both paths to get there. For today's episode, F1 Year 3 news. The Formula One race came and went. And unless you're one of the many people that's impacted by the construction before, the race during, and then the deconstruction and trying to put everything back to normal after, it almost seems like it didn't happen, but it did. So the Las Vegas Sun has an article about the Grand Prix success and the need for some changes or adaptations to continue improving, because they definitely want to make the Formula One race permanent, a permanent fixture in the professional sports component of the fun economy. Hopefully that'll work out for everybody. OKRs. These are 2 Wikipedia links. OKRs and KPIs. OKRs are objectives and key results. I will describe those with additional detail in a moment. KPIs, key performance indicators. There are Wikipedia pages you can visit for each of those. And we'll get on to describing them in a moment. So yeah, Formula One race. I'm not going to talk about the Formula One race too much, but it is sort of the shiny example that I talk about frequently as an example of what happens when the interests of a small number of people with money, drive some decision making, which the decisions that are made don't always go well for the rest of us. On that note, let's get started for real. So what are these acronyms? And technically, by the way, they are called initialisms. An acronym is a abbreviation or a shortening words and whatnot to form a single word. Usually, it doesn't have to be a single word. But for example, NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. So you take the first letter of each word. So that's the usual way to form an acronym. An initialism is the same thing, except that you say the word by saying each letter. KPI, key performance indicator, OKR, objectives and key results. So there you go, initialisms. A KPI is a key performance indicator. Hey, that sounds familiar. It is a metric, usually a number, that is checked against a target value to determine whether the overall thing being evaluated, a project or a company or whatever the case may be, how well it is doing based on the delta between the target and the actual. In engineering, we could call this the error for purposes of control systems. Usually there are multiple indicators that help to form some notion of objective status. So you can say, subjectively, you could say, it's cold. But objectively, you'd say it's 30 degrees Fahrenheit, for example. So objective status, actual values that you can measure against expected or target values. Those are your key performance indicators, or they could be. And OKR, an objective or key result. I think I said and objectives and key results. I mean, if you have multiple, you can kind of group them together. But objective or key result, a single thing, which is much more about aspiration or goal setting goals, than metrics and deviations, launching a product, building a home, increasing public transit use. These are examples of objectives. A key result for each of these might be a product with a certain feature set for its first iteration. This is probably more like a software product objective or a key result. A built home that is approximately on schedule and which passes the move-in checks from the owner, or some positive response from a growing public transit ridership over time. especially repeat riders. So these are key results that don't necessarily have like a target value. So you don't know if there's a specific deviation, but you're making it happen. So one does not replace the other. They work together as part of an overall methodology to measure progress and status, forming a big picture, if you like. Think of KPIs as how are we doing now, and OKRs as how are we coming along. So Formula One is my go-to example. Yes, I know. I pick on them a lot. They deserve it. They're raking in the dough. So it looks like the OKRs for the Formula One event. And if you read through that article, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's great. They're talking about ESPN viewership, global viewership, press coverage, the number of A-listers who attended the event. Those are celebrities or celebrities, if you like. So celebrities that attend an event draw attention, and then they post on social media, and then other people interact with that social media. So they're all touching Vegas. The OKRs are national and international press coverage and viewership as a vehicle to advertise this oasis in the desert, of course, not to mention visitor numbers for race attendance, especially those A-listers, and presumably in general, if the race grabs non-race fans to come and hang out in Vegas. So the LVCVA, so if you read that article, that's who they're talking to. The LVCVA, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, keeps track of all these numbers. So they are really hoping that Formula One becomes a permanent fixture. And in order to justify that pursuing that new element, a new component of the fun economy, you got to have some data. So LVCVA captures that data. Now, do they capture enough? We'll see. So did the Formula One enable a presentable bump? As in you could tell people, hey, look, we had twice as many visitors this week than the year previous, same week, or last month, same week, or whatever, however they want to present it. So if they can present a bump in tourist visitors, to help downplay the soft summer, then they can literally jump up and say, we're so back, baby. What happens in Vegas is right here. You can see it on ESPN all over the world. Yay. The LVCVA is already tracking a variety of metrics, as I intimated. I have pointed you all to the website, the lvcva.com website, the research tab on that website, where you can find all sorts of tourism information, city of origin, week over week, month, same week, previous year, year over year, all that. More. There's probably more. You can find it if you need it. The website and the tab and the data. Their KPIs for Formula One almost certainly align with these data to get back to the baseline visitor and tourism revenue numbers. Maybe even go to a growth trend. I think I read somewhere that it looks like I think 2025, was it 42 million? I can't remember. It was over 40 million people, 40 million visitors. It could have been a few repeats, but it was over 40 million. I think it was 42. I thought I read somewhere that they said 46 million. I don't know where that was, but this for 2024, they're projecting it might be as maybe somewhere around 39.1 million. So that's gonna smart. It's gonna hurt a little bit. It's hard to market that. We have almost as many people this year as last year. Yay! Last year was the Super Bowl, so everybody says, well, Super Bowl for that one day. It threw off the whole year. So we get a growth trend, which is why there is some exuberance about Formula One attendance. Then we can say, hey, look, we're back. Numbers are coming back up. If there's an assumption that this is the beginning of a return to tourism norms, then good news. I guess New Year's Eve will be another big data point coming up, and if it falls short, I think I heard a rumor that it's going to be about 50% of usual, but we don't have to speculate. New Year's is coming up in 3 weeks-ish. No, 2 weeks. Today's the 12th. 2 weeks and 3 days, 3.5 days. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what New Year's looks like, and I'm sure they will make a big thing of it if it's getting back to normal. Now, it remains to be seen if there will be any lawsuits from business losses or other issues from smaller companies, smaller businesses, family businesses, restaurants, etc., as there were for the previous 2 race years. And we know the previous lawsuits were settled without too much detail or fanfare after. From what I understand, the businesses that were impacted and were part of, I don't know if it was individual suits or if there was one class action. I don't know if there were enough people for a class. There was some sort of a promotional arrangement. They got official status or who knows what, but a deal was struck. But as is pointed out in the article, there are still some things to look at about the track and related items, not hearing too much about concern for impact on people in small local business. Everybody loves to hear that the Fontainebleau or the Bellagio or Resorts World raked in the dough, but what about the smaller players, the local business owners, the local entrepreneurs who are put in peril? I suspect there are public comment periods and some outreach on the part of the Clark County Commission and or the LVCVA, and maybe even the Liberty, whatever that company is that does the Formula One people. But I have to wonder how they actually managed this workflow and data capture given the aftermath of the previous two races. Like, there were some pretty obvious problems. This third race will be the one to watch to see if anybody learned anything after the fact regarding how things went to plan and how things went to plan. Sorry, I emphasized that wrong. Went to plan and met those OKRs and KPIs for real, or maybe did not. We should be learning about the impact before, during, and after en masse, not from one or two people who happen to get a microphone to speak into from a local news station. And that's usually how most things happen in Vegas. If you're not a big, sports celebrity, wealthy celebrity, if you're walking around making a movie, if you're an independent movie producer, you may or may not get interviewed. But if you're Mark Wahlberg, you'll get interviewed whenever you leave your house, if he still lived here. So we do have a shiny objects problem here. But the people who are negatively impacted by Formula One or by any road construction or some other issues that Vegas is kind of known for, it'd be interesting to know those things as though they were water levels or the weather, right? Rather than just, we did a 2-minute segment interviewing a business owner who lost $4 million from the lack of foot traffic or whatever. So it'd be interesting if these things were more visible, or as we in engineering say, observable. Can we determine what's really happening before, during, and after Formula One, or at any time through the year? And if you're thinking, haven't you talked about a rolling introspective? Thank you for listening. So how about some economic and locality development? I'm going to take a moment and get some water. So to you, it will seem like I'm already back. But to me, I will go get some water and I'll be right back. All right, we're back. It's like I never left. I was just thinking, I don't know if you're familiar with the video game Joust. Joust was an Atari cabinet game in arcades. So when your bird, your mount for your aerial jousting, when it would materialize on the playing field, it would make this cool sound effect. Like that'd be kind of a cool return from a pause. Anyway, economic and locality development. So I was going to say urban development, but depends. Okay then, so our cities in Clark County have a pretty standard setup. Economic development, the staff keeping track of data and the future plans and whatnot. And of course we have the LVGEA, the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, and the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, LVCVA, the former playing a specific role in developing our economy and the economic diversity that has been the shiny new thing since around 2018 or so. And then, of course, after the pandemic, it became twice as shiny and quite desirable. And I've already gone over the LVGEA website content recently regarding key industries and where the entrepreneurial ecosystem figures into their content strategy. And I've done this in more than one recent episode, actually, of this program. So hopefully you were able to pick those up. What was it, two years ago, when they were looking for their senior VP of entrepreneurial development? That's a weird title, but anyway, I mean, you're not developing entrepreneurial. You're developing the ecosystem. You're developing the infrastructure. So I guess it's implied. The metrics to measure and improve as goals of the role were called out as follows. And this is from the actual job description document, which was being passed around at the time because people were a little bit concerned about who they might hire. And then they hired that person anyway. But from what I understand, that person is no longer in that role and has moved on. So something like 2 years, maybe 3. I think it was 2.5. So these are the actual bullet items that they were being called the metrics. It wasn't a comprehensive list, but it was a starting point. So measure these and then, so determine how to measure them, determine what the right target values would be, and then measure. Early stage funding compared with national and global averages. So are we getting as much funding as everybody else? That's a tricky one. Median seed round. So how much money are startups getting in their seed round? Median Series A round. So how many dollars are startups that are making progress? How much are they getting? The number of software developers / engineers in Las Vegas, MSA, that's the Metropolitan Statistical Area. That's something the Office of Management and Budget uses for the federal government to designate measurement areas. So how many software developers? How many more over time? Software engineer salary, number of exits each year, and the time to exit. Usually you want that to be 5 years, 4, if possible. That's mostly driven by your investors wanting to get their money back with their investment benefit, the interest or the growth, whatever it is, the increase in value. The problem with this list, in my opinion, this was not the Senior VP of Entrepreneurial Innovation Ecosystem Development, which could include a vast variety of entrepreneurial and innovative pursuits. This is what I talk about all the time in case you are new here. Not everything is software, but of entrepreneurial development around the software startups world, tech startups that do not require much more than laptops and cloud computing and coffee shops or co-work spaces. So you're not looking at restaurants, you're not looking at, I don't know, pick anything that isn't a software company, because the world is full of startups and entrepreneurs building them, and they're not programming all day. But there's an exuberance around software startups here in Vegas. The next Silicon Valley. Aside from the general issue, the one I just mentioned, did you hear me read anything about failure analysis, serial startup pursuits, reinvestment on exit, and so on? I used to tell people, sometimes if people exit, that means they actually leave. Doesn't mean they're sticking around automatically. So they should be aware of that. The bullet list I read did not suggest that these were the only metrics, of course, and it says it in the text before the list, that this is possibly a partial list, but this is certainly the things that they were thinking about. I was concerned at the time when I first saw this that these were the only metrics used as examples, though. They could have used any other, these are examples. Whoever was making this list could have said, we want to also measure startups that don't make it. Because as I always tell people, if you only measure, and this is the airplane problem, operations research was invented because of this sort of thing. If you only measure, let me try to describe this. During World War II, airplanes would return from sorties over the Axis part of Europe, the target areas. So Allied aircraft would return to base, usually on the British Isles somewhere. They would have bullet holes all over them. So they were trying to decide, where should we put more armor, pilot, cockpit, or engines, or control surfaces? Where should we reinforce the aircraft so that they don't get shot up so much? And someone in the back of the room, I'm spacing on his name because I wasn't really preparing to talk about this, but it was either Ibrahim, I think. Okay, we can look it up. We have the power of the internet right here. Operations research inventor. Nope. None of these people are the right course. George Danzig. There's a bunch of silence that I hope gets clipped out. I'll check it. Anyway, so some guy in the back of the room, and I cannot remember, I can't find his name right now, but I'll find it. Airplane, bullet holes. Yeah, of course. Survivorship bias. Anyway, so the guy says we shouldn't be looking at the planes that get back. We should be looking at the planes that don't come back. Those are the planes that needed to have more protection for the pilot or whoever, right? And so that's why it's important to not only look at startups that get funding and exit, you have to look at the ones that don't get funding or don't exit, right? They don't make it. So failure analysis, the failure modes, reasons for failure, because that's when you start to determine, well, what do we need to do with our ecosystem to make more success or to make the failures not so dire, right? Not every idea is a guaranteed success, but how do we reduce the cost, fail fast, as the saying goes, right? Hey, I was in Silicon Valley from 1993 to 2001. Startups fail. If you have a vibrant, vital, valid, pick a few V words, ecosystem, if you have a so-called startup scene, if people are turning their entrepreneurial notions into actual startup effort, they're not all going to make it. So the idea is to measure the failures, failure analysis. I don't see that in the thinking in Vegas. So here are some questions for you. Yeah, we have 2 more sections. We're getting there. Whenever you happen to be listening to this, for maybe reading it, if you have the transcript handy, do you have entrepreneurial aspirations? Are you pursuing something right now? Sorry, my voice is getting nuts again. Is it a software startup in Vegas or something else, or maybe somewhere else? For years now, I have leaned heavily towards this notion that entrepreneurs are pursuing something interesting and or new to them. And they may need funding. They may need, maybe they're going to bootstrap. Maybe they have capital from a previous exit. Who knows? Entrepreneurs can open a coffee shop, start food trucks, create software, consult for others, take on an entrepreneur in residence role somewhere. The possibilities are many. Obviously, I've not even scratched the surface with that list. Obviously, the job description was for somebody who, despite the title, entrepreneurial development, most definitely, software engineer counts. They're just thinking software startups. But if you actually measure entrepreneurialism, so that's implied in the job title, but not in the job description, you would say, oh, okay, so how many coffee shops, how many food trucks, how many bookshops, how many service, like consultancy, how many hires? Are you hiring employees? Are you a solopreneur? Right, so you can collect a lot of data, and a more comprehensive list would have given some flavor to the job description. Like, oh, okay, we're looking at the actual entrepreneurial bent of Greater Vegas, not just software startups. I ask a lot. The problem in Greater Vegas, in my opinion, has been the belief that this is the next Silicon Valley. And so investment capital and interest in general has focused on tech, especially software. And I've heard those words from someone involved in the part of the startup scene that gets them money. The investors are only looking at return on investment, and they really want tech software startups. And to some extent bio, and there was some dabbling in cannabis startups, but software startups, and I'll tell you something I learned at Philips, the perceived value of software is higher to the person perceiving it. The value of the software is higher than the value of the hardware it's running on. So even though the iPhone is, how cool the iPhone is, it's the iPhone operating system and all the applications that are cool, and the camera. But the value of the software is perceived to be higher. That's just the way it is. I think cars are different, but for something like a computer or a mobile phone, a tablet, it's not what it is, it's what it can do for me, and that's the software. But this is not a strong area here in Vegas based on the historical curriculum pursuits of the younger talent pool members, the talent pool of our ecosystem. We are not overflowing with software engineers. So that's why it's one of the metrics. Can we add software engineers by whatever means? This makes hiring tricky if you actually want to look locally, if you want to be a software startup in the next Silicon Valley. But the notion of importing talent has been floated many times, which is a message to our population that, guess what? You are just not good enough. We're going to have to bring in new people. And I don't know if people really consider that messaging. Go be a valet. We got to bring in some software engineers. That's an unfortunate circumstance. That's why our education infrastructure needs to sort of tune itself to create entrepreneurs rather than employees. But that's a thing I've talked about before. I wonder if that would be another OKR and KPI question. Probably. What do you think of the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem in the greater Vegas area, and call it Clark County for some actual boundaries? What do you think? We're still in the questions for you section. Does it seem vital, maybe viable? Is it an environment which you feel would enable your entrepreneurial and or innovation efforts? If I can speak. Could you be successful here, or are you finding success here? And what sort of entrepreneurial innovation are you pursuing or thinking about? And actually, even if it was just software startups from that job description, whoever wrote the job description, I understand that they were probably going to let the candidate and the eventual hire figure out what that list was. But they really steered it towards a very simplistic software startup environment. It could have been so much more interesting to try to plant the seeds that not everything is software. But final section, 37 minutes by my clock. So, the Genius Roundtable, Cohort 2, as part of Initiative 2026, which I talked about last week, as formerly known as Initiative 2025, includes this very conversation. What are your OKRs and KPIs? There are some obvious objectives, though they don't always seem obvious if you watch the local press and even the non-local press. Tourism and gaming get a lot of attention. Do we have a lot of tourists? And as KPIs, they are, measured numbers. But from an OKR standpoint, you want to have people having fun. You want to have people spending money. You want to have people milling around, not spending time in their hotel rooms. So there has to be the appearance of fun. And that's what YouTubers here in Vegas like to show. That is not the case. So we have people wandering around with their iPhones or whatever, and like, look, this is an empty casino. Look, this Denny's is empty. Look, this pedestrian bridge is empty. Look, this sidewalk is empty. It's kind of a weird obsession. It kind of makes me laugh. You're like, I don't know. So the obvious objectives, tourism and gaming, especially when they are down, which they have been, considered indicators of the economy at large. So global economy, people look to Vegas. I mean, technically they look at travel and just money flow, right? If people move to other cities, they bring money. The cities will have more revenue. Flights will be booked and full. So you can look at a lot of the pieces that go into vacation, tourism, trade shows, obviously. From what I understand, the trade show scene has not been too bad here in Vegas. So we'll have to see. With CES coming up January 5th, 2026. So we'll see how the turnout is. I don't think they've returned to the usual 180,000 people in attendance. So we'll find out. Now that we have more pro sports, we have the Raiders, we have the Golden Knights, and we have the Aces, and we have, is there one other team? And then, of course, the Oakland A's will become the Las Vegas A's after they've had their time as the Sacramento Athletics. So now that we have more pro sports and big special events around those sports, Super Bowl, Formula One, in addition to our normal special events like July 4th and New Year's Eve and whatnot, and I would consider some of our larger trade shows, EDC, Electric Daisy Carnival, SEMA, which I think is either just finishing or was already finished. So SEMA, Mobile World Congress Las Vegas, NAB, National Association of Broadcasters. There are various gun shows. There are various rodeo shows. The list goes on. There's plenty of events. So we can look at those as more data points to measure KPIs and OKRs. and they are presumed to be more people and more money. Pretty straightforward. However, if you and I are trying to get our startups from aspiration to up and running on the way to our exit, maybe we are looking at gaming and occupancy rates and thinking, it would be great if there were some more assets on our ecosystem asset map to enable what we're trying to accomplish. Maker spaces for prototyping your wood or metal or plastic things. Specialty stores for particular supplies. No more Fry's Electronics here, as you know. Or maybe you need some international foods or a laser. Who can say? So are things available? I will say, by the way, when I first moved here, it kind of makes me laugh, obviously, when I think about this, because it's kind of a naive question, if I have to be honest. But we were sitting in a Starbucks, and one of the people I was talking to said exactly this. What would it take for Vegas to be like Silicon Valley? And my pat answer, my glib answer was always a time machine and Stanford. But in all honesty, the thing that Silicon Valley has that is hard to reproduce, not aside from the culture, which has been emergent for 100 years, and they do have Stanford, which was a non-trivial component. They have everything you need. If there is something that you need to enable your start, now Fry's Electronics closed there as well, but there's electronics places, there are maker spaces, there's prototyping facilities, there's an FCC test center in Mountain View. So if you're doing anything with electronics, you can go get FCC certified, so you aren't killing radio signals and TV reception or whatever with your new doodad. So you need electronics, you need chip turns, you need like a prototype chip, quick turn. Everything you need is in Silicon Valley. So the real answer to what would it take is a lot of infrastructure, a lot of things to enable. Because it's really like, what would have happened if Silicon Valley is forming and they said, we're only going to build 3D printers. That's it. So you're going to have to do software, and then you can 3D print some stuff now and then. That's it. Things would not have gone the way they did. But because Silicon Valley actually started out as silicon, right? Shockley Semiconductors, the Traitorous 8, Fairchild, Intel, later AMD. A friend of mine worked at Chips and Technology doing quick turn chip designs. Altera, Xilinx for FPGAs, though they were both acquired. The list goes on, right? So there was and then from there you got the prototyping, you get the was it Quantus Labs does your thermal and environmental testing, FCC testing. What else? Yeah, anything you need, you can. So you spend less time trying to get these things. You spend more time working on your thing. So what would it take to make Vegas the next Silicon Valley? Yeah, time machine. Go back 100 years, start building those things. But yeah, maybe we need other stuff. We don't need, we can be, like I said, it could be international foods. If we're going to have restaurants here, do we have the things that people need to test new menu items, to test new concepts and so on? I'm going to guess probably, but I don't know. Do you have access to reliable power, communication, like cable or DSL or fiber, transportation routes or public transit to get around? And the list goes on. Your needs probably overlap with others, but do they align with the job description that I just read earlier? Are you thinking Series A funding and exit, or are you trying to make each day count where neither of those things, Series A funding nor exit, are things on your mind at all? Like, I just got to try to figure out where to find a laser, and you might have to go to Silicon Valley. You would ideally bring some OKRs and KPIs to the table, and of course that would be a round table for the Genius Roundtable. Round table with a space and round table without a space, two different things, but they are related. Others would do the same, and we would likely have like 80% overlap, maybe more, and with a few aha items of either kind, OKR, KPI. Then we would figure out how to measure the KPIs at scale. No, we're not going to be asking 100 people some questions once a year. That's the only kind of study I see here or in other places. I'd like to see a little bit more innovation than that. And how to assess progress toward the OKRs, and how to best share these pieces of information so that anyone wondering can see what these elements are of our ecosystem and how they're doing, and maybe suggest their own like their status, their values, their measurements, whatever they are. In the meantime, Vegas, how are we doing and how are we coming along? It feels like we should be concerned. That's all I got today. My voice is going nuts. I'm sorry. The OKRs and the KPIs. First of all, where would you go to find out what those are? There are probably some on the LVGA website, or you could probably ask. They recently hired a new CEO, Danielle Casey. She was in New Mexico doing economic development, I think in Albuquerque. Before that, she was in the she was in the Scottsdale area. And before that, she was in the Phoenix area in Arizona. So if I'm remembering correctly, I believe I am. Was she in Scottsdale? Well, I was living in Arizona again from 2001 to 2005. Then I moved back to Silicon Valley for round 2. So from August of 2001, perfect timing, to September, October of 2005, I was in Phoenix, and I believe Danielle was there. So I haven't talked to her. We connected on LinkedIn. So they have a new CEO of the LVGEA. They're putting together a statewide organization called the Nevada Economic Development Association, or Alliance, but I think it's association. NEDA, N-E-D-A. So that they're trying to figure out how to collaborate, work together. But my concern is because usually, I believe for the 2 previous years, I don't know about this year, I didn't really look. The LVGEA was very excited to do some handshaking, glad handing, if you like, with the visitors to the Vegas area, not the A-list celebrities, but the corporate types, the people with businesses, with interests at Google or Amazon or wherever. Google and Amazon actually already have a presence here in the Henderson area. But hey, look at how much fun you're having in Vegas. Wouldn't you like to move your company here? Look at all the distractions we have for your employees. The thing that they're focusing on, though, is big companies. So if you visit their key industries, which I've talked about in previous episodes, the LVGEA is not necessarily focused on startups or entrepreneurialism. They're certainly not focused on general entrepreneurialism. If they're focused on anything, it would be tech. But what I've already commented on in previous episodes was that they really didn't do anything with Global Entrepreneur Week, which had an event, a collection of events for 9 days, I think it was, throughout Nevada, right? Statewide events. It's a global event, so that's fine. Nor was there anything really on Las Vegas Startup Week, which was like a month before Global Entrepreneur Week. Unfortunately, Global Entrepreneur Week always seems to kind of land on Formula One week. So this was the 3rd time. So you end up with, let's look at the race cars or the drivers or the A-list celebrities or all the other stuff going on, the paddock, the construction, the deconstruction now. So Global Entrepreneur Week really didn't get any attention. The take home is that for all the bluster about how we're the next Silicon Valley, which I think has been fading, I don't think people are buying that one too much. Nobody really talks about it. So my curiosity would be, what are the actual OKRs and KPIs now that the senior VP of entrepreneurial development has stepped down onto other things? Have they replaced that position, or what are they really doing? So that's, if I can talk to the new CEO over at LVGA, or anyone really, it's really hard to have those conversations here in Vegas with people who are not entrepreneurs. And that's really the take home. And if we have a conversation, you and I, in the near future about the Genius Roundtable, I will tell you what I said when we did the first cohort. People who are making decisions about entrepreneurialism are not entrepreneurs. They are working for City of Las Vegas, City of North Las Vegas, City of Henderson, County of Clark, LVGEA, LVCVA. So anybody that's thinking about the startup scene, they're probably really thinking fun economy, corporate relocations, workforce development, workforce availability, how many jobs will be created, right? If you do a startup and you create more than 10 jobs in a year or two, maybe I'll say a year, if you create more than 10 jobs in a year, you're moving, right? The first couple of months at least, you're going to be it'd be cool if you can pay yourself. So those are the sorts of things that require a lot of time. I don't know if they're really looking at things like that. So those are the OKRs and the KPIs that we really should be taking a look at. We should be talking about them. We should find out what they think, they, put the air quotes around they, but also what entrepreneurs on the ground think. What's missing? What do we need to look at? What can we measure so that other people know, here's how we're doing. Hey, am I falling behind? That kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of work that can be done here, but not a lot of arduous work, but there are a lot of things that can be kind of measured or taken into account, considered, discussed, but it wouldn't require like years of study. It would just be actual conversations, actually taking the time to say, hey, yeah, what would make it easier? Not that startups are easy, but like, are there obstacles in the way that we should be able to not have in the way? Can we move that just a little bit so we can get by? And that's what the Genius Roundtable was about the first time. And I've already had an entire episode recently about what I would do differently for cohort 2. And that's what we're going to aim for Initiative 2026. Why initiative? Well, first of all, project is not a good word when followed by a year. Too much chaos there. Initiative is a term we use at the Innovative Vegas Foundation to represent a collection of projects. So an initiative has one or more component projects. So here there would be, we would think of it as communities of practice. We would be talking about things like food, entrepreneurialism, technology, medical perhaps, medical or sciences, manufacturing. So some would overlap with the key industries of the Southern Nevada region. Some might not. Hiring employees. What's the talent pool like? How are our educational resources? Are they up to the task of empowering, enabling, reinforcing, elevating our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem? Are we going to have enough people to make that go? Do we have enough people who have the gumption, the notion, the chutzpah? If you're a presidential candidate from 2016, the chutzpah, no, the chutzpah. Do we have people who want to do these things? Are we going to come up short? So these are the sorts of conversations to have and then to pursue if we're coming up short or if we see potential issues where we could improve things. Have conversations with CCSD, with Production by Street. I don't know if you can hear all the car noise. CCSD for education. What about workforce development? There are now programs like, now I'm going to space on the acronym, SS, whatever it is, the government funding for startups, and UNLV is one of the, is accredited to work in that space. Government Startup Funds University. SBIR and STTR. There you go. So those are from NSF, National Science Foundation, the America's Seed Fund for Tech Innovation. So unfortunately, that slants things, although I think you can probably do biomedical. But we can also come up with ways to do other things, like what's possible, what are people trying to do, what problems are they running into, and so on. So identifying what those are, what the OKRs would be to get around those and to enable the ecosystem and people in it. And then the key performance indicators to determine whether we're getting better and so on. And the list of things would be longer than the one in that job description. So that's the take home. Very clearly, my voice has had enough. Now my clock says 57 minutes, 56 and a half. So I think we're going to call it a day. So thanks for listening as always. And ponder objectives and key results. Multiple, plural. Objectives and key results all grouped together. And then key performance indicators, KPIs. And then ponder also whether you'd like to participate in the Genius Roundtable Cohort 2 or other parts of Initiative 2026. And if you'll recall, we're going to start doing, it could have been this week, but I think it'll be next week. Well, I got to get the word out, and that's always a challenge. But we'll start slowly. We're not in a mad rush, but I think having a really good group of people across multiple disciplines, multiple areas of entrepreneurialism and innovation. Not everything is software. Not everything is an app. Pardon me. So yeah, a variety of people, a variety of inputs and conversation around those things, and we can be innovative about our innovation ecosystem. Imagine that. All right, I'm going to go. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week. Whenever you're listening to this, there will be another episode. Take care.